Hi, everybody. Welcome to 3 Minute Coach, coming to you from Omaha, Nebraska. I just finished 2.5 great days at the Clifton Strength Summit with the Gallup organization here in Omaha. It's talking about all things StrengthsFinder and just a real passion to help create a coaching movement and how everybody needs a coach. So if you were at that, would love to hear you. Go ahead and comment on this video. Anyway, this week's 3 Minute Coach, want to get this out to you before I hop a plane home to San Diego. I want to stick with the idea of this job question. Last week, I talked a lot about how do you know, I talked about the SIGN, S-I-G-N, success, instinct, growth, and need, and evaluating whether or not you're in a good fit. And then before that, I talked a little bit more about understanding if it's time to move on. We talked about whether or not you should, whether or not you're leaving a bad position or you're moving towards something good. Those are all different job places. If you haven't checked those out, go ahead back on my Facebook page here or on YouTube and check that out. But this week, one thing I want to bring up is that for a lot of people, when it comes to understanding their vocation, basically what it is we do with our 9 to 5 or 9 to 9 for some of you, is we have to ask ourselves questions about what exactly is it we expect our job to do. I meet a lot of people who they talk to a coach or consultant because they're trying to typically make change, or they want to get the most out of their life, their relationships, their career, their community, whatever it is. And I think specifically work, because it's such a huge part of our life, ends up being a key factor. A couple things I've noticed in my time working with people over the years. A lot of times we misunderstand our relationship to our job. And I'm sure there's a more nuanced way of saying this, but I'm pretty simplistic. So I often say that when it comes to our job, it is often a vehicle or a calling. Now, a vehicle is something that is very useful and critical and needed. A vehicle takes us from one place to the other. It provides something and it moves us along, but it's a utility. It's something that kind of gets us there. And so for people who would say, yeah, my job is a vehicle, they would say, you know what? It gives me resource to pay my mortgage. It gives me resource to buy food for my family, pay for insurance, save up for education for my kids. It gives me resource to let me take the vacations I want to take, to have the things I want to have, and to have the options to support my family in the way I want to support my family. And so what I find, especially in the early days, when people are looking at jobs and careers, they start from, oh yes, for now, I'll just think about vehicle. And in the early days, I really believe there's something to be said for getting knowledge, skill, and experience in whatever vehicle you find. The problem is, if you have a desire for calling and value in our life, which I think we all do, we all want purpose and commitment. What ends up happening is, if your job is just a vehicle, then the outside of your life, the balance of your time, has to be devoted to things that are in alignment with your values, your family. You have to take the vacations. You have to create the books. You have to create the things. You have to create the life, the relationships, and the community. And so a lot of people say, well, I will take the vehicle. That's the priority for me. And the balance of my time, so I can be free. It's a vehicle that provides me the freedom to do the other things I want to. But we're not intentional enough. Life happens. Things show up. We don't always process through every decision when it comes to our purchases, when it comes to our budgets, when it comes to our direction. And so we can be left with this part-time thing where sometime between 30 and 40, we start to think through, well, wait a minute. I spend so much time at work. I don't know how to get out of work. I really want my job to be a calling. I really want my job to be something that matters. Now, a vehicle is a utility. It kind of provides something, but it's very mechanized. It's not meant to provide a real overall overarching purpose and passion like a calling would. I heard somebody say once, a job is something you try to get. A career is something you try to keep. A calling is something you do because you feel like you're meant to give something away. You want to give away a piece of yourself. And I think a lot of us want to feel like we're giving away to our world, our friends, our families, our jobs, our governments, our nations, just our environment. We want to give away this thing inside of us that's unique and special. We want to make a difference. And so what can end up happening is that if we're not intentional, we start our careers getting a vehicle, and then we say, well, wait a minute. I think I want my vehicle to be a calling. But we don't want to have to make the change. We don't want to step out and say, you know what, I got a job and I meant to get a calling out of this. You may have a career even, and it's still not a calling. And so what happens is, so what we're finding, especially now, is that as the workforce shifts, more and more getting calling, or for some people they'll say purpose, like those are a bigger priority than they've ever been before. the traditionalists and baby boomers, things like that, they have a natural drive to say, I want a vehicle on some level that provides certain things so I can live my life around that. More and more, the workforce is starting to say, I want purpose, I want calling. The trick is, what happens if you didn't start that way? What if you didn't start making choices when you were younger about your jobs around those items? And how do you live a life based on calling and purpose? I think a lot of us want to merge the two, but here's the trick. If you started getting a job, which is a vehicle, you can't just suddenly transform that into a calling. Unless you have parts of that where you're like, you know what, I'm ready to ask for more. I love my job. Success, instinct, growth, and need that we talked about last time, that's key. But when it comes to calling, that also means that, well, if you're going to start your job search or your professional life going, man, I want calling and purpose, you've got to also be willing to make the sacrifices. That may mean renting, not buying. That may mean not having a new cell phone every 24 months. You don't get to whine about all the things that, when you don't have the vehicle that provides the resource. When you do, though, have calling and purpose. I think both sides of this coin, and I'm sure there's other sides as well, but for our simple discussion, it goes, what are the choices we're willing to make? Now, when it comes to navigating these pieces, if you're in a vehicle and you want to start becoming a calling, you want to start shifting that to a calling, start by asking, can you get more things in your day-to-day work that would be more life-giving? Back to those things that we need to do. I think you start with your supervisor. You ask for different components. You want to add more to your job. You look internally for development and growth opportunities. But you've got to start thinking about moving beyond the moment you're in. And then if that's not the case, you start talking about your family. With your family, meaning your spouse, your partner, your wife, whoever around you that you trust, that you can start to say, what do I want my future to look like? How do I create more of a hybrid? A vehicle and a calling, and start to do that. But you've got a vision for it before you make moves. People will start going from job to job, just hoping that they discover what it is they're called to do. I think if you really want your vehicle to become more like a calling, first of all, you have to know what your calling is. The key of that, of course, is starting to understand your talents, your strengths, and your abilities. That's why we use StrengthsFinder, is it gives people a language to go, wait a minute, I should start navigating towards that. Now, if you're starting from the opposite end, passion, purpose, a real calling, again, buckle down. Remember that a calling and purpose have to come with discipline. You've got to stop whining about all the things you don't have and go, okay, wait a minute. I've got to make hard choices. If I really want purpose and calling to be primary, I'm going to have to think about the vehicle pieces. I'm going to have to think about, okay, I need less resources. I might need less of a vehicle. So, do you have a vehicle or do you have a calling? Hopefully you have a little bit of both. But it's a conversation to start. If you have a vehicle and you want to shift to calling, start by understanding what is your calling. What is that part of you you're meant to give away? If you have a calling and you're like, but man, I sure want to live a life, well, you have to make a plan. What are choices that you need to make to manage your resources so you can live a purpose-driven life as much as you want, or a calling-driven life? Hope you've enjoyed this 3-Minute Coach. Hope you're doing really great. I would love to hear from you. What is something you'd like to hear on next week's 3-Minute Coach? Please go ahead, message me here or send me an email at michael@thedophanegroup.com. Look forward to talking to you tomorrow on Theme Thursday. We're going to talk about the StrengthsFinder theme of self-assurance, one of the rarest themes in the world. Look forward to talking to you then. Until then, have a great night. Lead courageously. Take care.